So still in Act 1, Scene 2, we hear Othello speak to the Duke. He's been accused by Brabantio of stealing his daughter using witchcraft. And this is what Othello says to all the senators. He says, "Most potent, grave, and reverend signors, my very noble and approved good masters, that I have taken away this old man's daughter is most true." So he's very honest in what he says. I have married her. The very head and front of my offending hath this extent no more. Then he says, "Rude am I in speech." So he's there saying that I'm not a politician, I'm not a Venetian, so I'm a soldier, and so I'm going to tell you, but I won't be using eloquent language. And he said, "And I'm little blessed with the soft phrase of peace, for since these arms of mine have 7 years pint." So since I'm 7 years old to now some 9 moons wasted, they've used their dearest action in the tented field, and little of this great world I can speak more than pertains to the feats of broil and battle. It's basically saying my whole life I've been a soldier, and that's all I can talk of. And therefore little shall I grace my cause in speaking for myself. So he's saying what I'm going to tell you is not graceful. Would be better for me to employ someone to tell you, but I will tell you from my point of view. Yet by your gracious patience I will a round unvarnished tale deliver of my whole course of love. So unvarnished here, I'm not going to embellish my story, and it's not going to be smooth and beautiful, but I will tell you of my whole course of love. What drugs, what charms, what conjuration, and what mighty magic, for such proceeding I am charged withal. I won his daughter. Then we come down here in his longest speech. He says, "Her father," that's Brabantio, "her father loved me and often invited me, still questioned me the story of my life, from year to year, the battles, sieges, fortunes that I had passed." So for Brabantio, Othello was a real interesting conversation piece, and he hung off every word. He loved the stories that Othello would tell him. I ran it through, even from my boyish days, to the very moment that he bade me tell it, wherein I spake of most disastrous chances, of moving accidents by flood and field, of hairbreadth escapes in the imminent deadly breach. So he's talking about the things that occurred to him, of being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery, of my redemption thence, and portents in my travels history, wherein of Antry's vast and desert's isle, rough quarries, rocks and hills, whose heads touch heaven, it was my hint to speak. Okay, so I've told him all these things of the experiences that I've had, very varied and very sad and dangerous. Such was the process. And of the cannibals that each other eat, it's from Africa, and so it's a different world. The anthropophagi, and men whose heads do grow beneath their shoulders, so that shrunken head type um, factor or that comes from ancient, or not ancient, but from African worlds. This to hear would Desdemona seriously incline, so she was really interested by it. But still the house affairs would draw her thence. But still, he's saying, she'd have to go off and do her jobs and do her duties, whichever as she could with haste dispatch. She would do them quickly, and she'd come again, with greedy ear devour up my discourse. So using a personification there to say that, she wanted to devour all the stories that he was telling with her greedy ears, which I observing, took once a pliant hour, and found good means to draw from her a prayer of earnest heart, that I would all my pilgrimage dilate. He's saying that here I determined that I would tell her everything of my pilgrimage, whereof by parcels she had something heard, but not intentively. I did consent, and often she did beguile her of tears. So my stories were so moving, she cried, when I did speak of some distressful stroke that my youth suffered. Yeah, she cried for that. My story being done, she gave me pains for a world of sighs. She swore in faith it was strange, it was passing strange, it was pitiful, was wonderful, wondrous pitiful. She wished she'd not heard it, yet she wished that heaven had made her such a man. And she thanked me, and she bade me as if I had a friend that loved her, I should but teach him how to tell my story. So she was totally engrossed in the stories that Othello told her. And that, she's saying there, well, can you tell someone else to tell the story? And that would woo her. That would be a way of courting her, and she would fall in love with that person. And upon this hint I spake. So he's saying, well, I told my own story because I thought that she would fall in love with me. And then he says, she loved me for the dangers that I had passed, and I loved her that she did pity them. So it's an interesting sort of concept of justification for their romance, that she pitied him basically. She felt sorry for him, so she fell in love with him, and he loved her because she felt sorry for him. So it's not a very good basis for a romance and a marriage. And then he says, this is the only witchcraft that I have used. So, Brabantio had accused him of using potions and all sorts of black magic to steal his daughter. And he's saying, my stories were the things that won her heart. And, and then Desdemona goes on to confirm that.